A young widow stood at the gates of a mansion she once called home, clutching her twin babies close to her chest. Tears blurred her vision as her husband's family ordered her out, their voices sharp with disgust. To them, she wasn't family. She was just the black woman who stole their son. They didn't care that she had just buried her husband or that her twins cried from hunger. What they didn't know was this. Hidden inside a lawyer's briefcase was a will, a final act of love from her late husband, and it carried a secret worth $200 million. Her name was Maya. She had grown up in a modest neighborhood, raised by hardworking parents who taught her the values of dignity, kindness, and perseverance. She never had much in terms of wealth, but she carried herself with quiet strength. Years earlier, her path had crossed with Daniel, the man who would change her life. Daniel came from a wealthy white family that lived behind towering gates and walls. He was everything Maya wasn't, privileged, sheltered, and born into old money. But where his family's hearts were cold, Daniel's was warm. Despite disapproving whispers, the two fell in love. Their love wasn't easy. Daniel's family saw Maya as an outsider, unworthy of their bloodline. At family gatherings, they gave her cold stares, whispered behind her back, and made subtle remarks about her skin, her hair, her background. Yet Daniel defended her fiercely, refusing to let prejudice break their bond. Eventually, they married. Their wedding day was filled with joy for them, though the smiles of his relatives were forced. When Maya gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, Daniel's happiness doubled, but the bitterness of his family deepened. They viewed the children as proof of a tainted legacy. Still, Maya held her head high. She loved her husband and her children fiercely, ignoring the venom that came from the people who should have been family. But then, tragedy struck. Daniel died suddenly in an accident, leaving Maya broken. She thought his family would step forward with comfort, but instead, their masks fell away completely. To them, Daniel's death was a chance to erase her. The days after Daniel's death were a blur of grief and exhaustion. Maya poured herself into caring for her twins, who were too young to understand why their father wasn't coming home. She needed support, but instead, she faced hostility. At the funeral, Daniel's relatives avoided her gaze. They gathered in clusters, murmuring about inheritance, about bloodlines, about setting things right. When she approached, conversations stopped. She was invisible, except for the daggers in their eyes. Soon after, the cruelty escalated. Daniel's mother approached her one evening with cold precision. She informed Maya that the mansion, the businesses, the wealth, none of it was hers. "You were never one of us," her expression seemed to say. Within days, servants who once followed her husband's orders began ignoring hers. Relatives ransacked Daniel's study, taking documents and possessions as though they were vultures circling a carcass. And then came the breaking point. One rainy afternoon, while Maya soothed her crying twins, the family gathered. With icy voices, they told her she had no claim to the home. They accused her of trapping Daniel, of being a gold digger, of staining their family name. They didn't just want her out of the house. They wanted her erased. Security was called. Bags of her belongings were thrown into the mud outside. Maya, carrying her twins, stumbled into the storm, humiliated and heartbroken. For days, she wandered, relying on the kindness of a friend to provide shelter. Nights were long and sleepless, filled with the sound of her children's cries. She thought of Daniel often, remembering his promises to always protect her. She couldn't understand how everything had crumbled so quickly. But what Maya didn't know was that Daniel had seen this day coming. He had known his family's cruelty, their hatred, their greed, and before his death, he had left behind a final safeguard, a secret that would change everything. Far away, a lawyer searched desperately for Maya, holding the one document that could rewrite her fate. The will was clear. Every estate, Every business, every penny of Daniel's fortune, 200 million total, belonged to his wife and children. It was weeks later when the lawyer finally found her. Maya sat in a cramped apartment, her children asleep on a thin mattress beside her. She looked tired, worn down by grief and struggle. The lawyer's knock startled her, but his words changed everything. He explained Daniel's wishes. The will he had signed in secret. Maya listened in disbelief as the lawyer laid the documents before her. Her late husband had left her not just the money, but control over every asset his family once held dear. The empire they had built their pride on now belonged entirely to the woman they had cast into the streets. News traveled fast. Daniel's family, smug in their victory, gathered to divide what they thought was theirs, only to be met with crushing reality. Their wealth, their mansions, their businesses, all transferred legally and irrevocably to Maya and the twins. The shock on their faces was almost poetic. For years, they had treated her as less than human, an unwelcome stain in their whitewashed world. But in the end, it was the woman they despised who now held the power. For Maya, it wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. Her husband had trusted her, honored her, and ensured that even in death, his love would shield her. The moment was bittersweet. She would have given it all just to have Daniel back, but there was satisfaction in knowing his family's cruelty had failed. With newfound security, Maya didn't sink to the level of her in-laws. Instead, she rose higher. She moved her children into a safe home and invested carefully, building a future they could thrive in. Her focus wasn't on punishing those who wronged her, but on ensuring her twins would grow up with dignity, strength, and love. The in-laws were left to reckon with their own bitterness, stripped of the wealth they worshipped. Their cruelty had cost them everything. Maya, on the other hand, carried forward with quiet grace. She honored Daniel's memory not by clinging to revenge, but by creating something meaningful out of the legacy he left behind. She donated to causes that supported women like her, women who faced discrimination, who were told they didn't belong, who were cast aside for the color of their skin. Her story became more than just one of wealth. It was a story of resilience, of justice, of the triumph of love over hate. And yet the ending raised a haunting truth. Maya was fortunate. She had Daniel's protection, even after death. But how many women endure similar cruelty with no safety net? How many mothers are pushed aside, erased, or broken because of the color of their skin, without a secret inheritance to rescue them? Racism is not just about hateful words. It is about stripping away humanity, dignity, and worth. Maya's story forces us to ask, how many more will be silenced before we choose to change? Her victory was personal, but the lesson is universal. Hatred may seek to destroy, but love, resilience, and justice will always rise stronger.